Hello everyone, I am Jonathan Little. I'm a professional poker player and author, and if you have seen any of my videos on YouTube, you will know that I'm a big fan of ICMizer. ICMizer is a program that essentially goes through your hands and lets you know if it thinks you're playing in accordance to the individual chip model, which basically lets you take into account the payout structure of a tournament, because the chips you stand to lose are worth way less than the chips you stand to gain, because if you double up, well, you don't win the tournament, guaranteed, right? And if you go broke, you have no potential chance to win the tournament in the future. So in the past, again, I've made videos just analyzing hands and also showing off the sit and go coach feature, which I love, which is now available on your iPhone and Android device, which is pretty sweet, so you can play with it on the go. They also just released the Nitro feature. It actually went really, really fast, and you didn't even see it, but at the beginning of this video, it was going through every hand that I played in a recent tournament that I ended up winning, where there were 273 hands, and 128 of them were somewhat shallow stack scenarios. This was from a turbo tournament, which is why I picked this one. I wanted to find hands that were shallow stacked. That is where ICMizer really excels, in my opinion. So what you do is you click on Load a Tournament, which I did. I pasted it here. I clicked on multi-table mode, tournament mode. I entered the number of chips in play, 6.39 million. Then I click Load Them. I loaded them really quickly. It analyzed the entire hand history in about 10 seconds or so. And instead of having to go through each hand individually now and load it up and take time doing that, now you just do that and all the hands are in it. I mean, the amount of time this is going to save is huge. So take a look at these hands. Again, there are 128 hands that were potential all-in or fold scenarios. And it turns out that I perhaps played poorly in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. This one's minus 0.09 and it was very close. All these other hands are very near neutral, and all these other hands are very, very profitable, right? We're really concerned with the hands that I played poorly, so let's take a look at them. In this hand, I folded, and ICMizer suggests a different play. Whenever you hover over the play that it suggests, as you see here, P with 15% of hands, you see King Jack suited is better than King 9 suited right there. So this should have been an all-in, under the gun, even though I am under the gun. One thing I've been working on very hard, especially in the past when I was really trying to plug one of my leaks, which was playing too many hands from early position, is I've been trying to play fewer hands from early position, just because I realized you have to take your hand against everyone else at the table. Interestingly enough, I probably didn't account for this well. Even though I have 14 big blinds, if everyone had 14 big blinds, this would probably be a fold. But notice there are quite a few shallow stacks. So even if I shove this King Jack suited, if I do get called, some portion of the time it's going to be against one of these very shallow stacks, which isn't that big of a deal. And you also see some 9 big blind stacks as well. Interestingly enough, let me copy my chip stack and give that chip stack to everyone and see what we should do. This is the kind of thing you can do very easily on ICMizer. You click Calculate, and now, as you see, it still says we can push this King Jack suited for a tiny profit, right? So me not paying attention to the stack sizes resulted in me making a fairly large error. 805 chips is quite a big error, right? But if all the stacks were the same as what I have here, you see my error would be minimal, right? Like folding is 0 EV, and shoving is 16 chips, I believe, which is not much at all, right? So that was my mistake. I clearly did not look at all the stacks, and if you don't look at the stacks, you're going to make errors. All right, let's take a look at the next hand. Here I folded facing a 3 big blind all-in, then a 5 big blind re-raise all-in. So let's take a look what it suggests we call with. And we see here, this fold was actually quite poor, right? It actually says I should be calling significantly wider than what I would have done here. I probably thought under the gun was going to be wide for 3 big blinds. And then I also probably assumed cutoff had to be a little bit tighter. But if you think about it, if cutoff can shove and then get me to fold and the other 2 people to fold, then he's basically putting in 3 big blinds, 2,400 chips, to try to win a pretty good chunk, right? He's almost getting 2-to-1 pot odds. So he needs to win 33% of the time, and clearly almost anything will win 33% of the time. So as you can see here, Queen 10 offsuit is a reasonably profitable call. It's not like it's a slam dunk call, but anytime you profit a third of a big blind or more, you should certainly be taking those spots. So here I just need to realize my pot odds were amazing. And Queen 10 is also an okay hand. It's not like it's total garbage like Queen 5 offsuit. So this is a spot where I certainly should have popped it in there as well. here we have a situation that I am generally going to disagree with ICMizer on, but let's take a look at it. Here we have the small blind, big blind, and then a min raise under the gun. Notice ICMizer thinks that this player should be min raising this range under the gun. And this is something I generally am going to disagree with. Like, I don't think very many people are raising ace-9 and ace-8 offsuit under the gun off a 15 big blind stack, or these small pairs. The opponent may not even raise stuff like ace-queen suited, ace-jack suited, ace-queen offsuit, king-queen suited, etc. They may just shove those. But let's assume our opponent's doing something like this from early position. Okay, now we can click Calculate again, and now you see that the sixes are a fold, right? So you always have to make sure when you're using any program that you go through and accurately assess your opponent's strategies. Let's say instead we think this player is raising a lot of hands because he's a maniac, right? Let's say we're paying attention to our opponents like we should. And this guy raises all sorts of garbage. Okay. And then we have to put down here his calling range. If we shove, it already has this as 7s and ace-10 or better, but let's just leave that there for now. You can certainly tinker their calling range. And if you see this, now we can shove incredibly wide. Now, why is that, you may ask? It's because under the gun's raising quite wide and not calling off very often at all. So if you mess around with this too much, you'll be way off Nash equilibrium. You can calculate Nash equilibrium, and I believe it'll take us back right to where we were. And it's going to say that these sixes are a profitable shove. So I'm not going to necessarily say this was a mistake. I typically think people are pretty snug from early position. So I'm okay with that scenario. That's fine. Here's another one where you can certainly go many ways. One thing ICMizer does not take into account is if you should be calling in these situations. So here, I folded, and it's suggesting I should go all in over a min raise from a 7 big blind stack. And that's because it has this player raising 36% of hands, and it has him calling off with everything. So interestingly enough, it has the opponent raising this and then calling with all of it, as he should, because he's going to be getting great pot odds. The question is, though, is the opponent actually raising this wide? Let's say the opponent's a little bit tighter. Let's also say the opponent, well, let's just do this for now. Let's say the opponent's just a little bit tighter and see what happens. You see now, king 5 offsuit is very close, like essentially break even. 8 chips is nothing. Let's say the opponent's doing something different. Let's say the opponent is instead only raising with the best hands and then some total garbage. So let's give the opponent a range where he's shoving all the stuff in the middle, right? He's shoving the medium hands, raising the nut hands that can easily call a shove. So these are the nut hands that can raise and then call it off happily. Then let's say he's raising a bunch of stuff like this, maybe some stuff like this. And then he's shoving all this other stuff in the middle. If that's what's happening, actually I've messed this up a little bit. We need to make the opponent calling off with all of it. Actually, I messed this up again. Well, here's what's happening here. I kind of screwed it up. And don't want to make this video go forever long. I ended up having this opponent calling with everything, and if the opponent's raising with these best hands and all this garbage, there's way too much garbage in the opponent's range. So in this scenario, I'm actually value shoving the king 5. If the opponent's folding these hands, though, it's also going to be an easy shove. So you know what? Maybe it is just a shove in a lot of scenarios. The way the opponent could fix their strategy is if they were to raise tighter. So let's say instead of raising all that garbage, they're raising more something like this with less garbage. Still says we should push very wide. So basically, the opponent can't bluff. The opponent can't bluff, and then the opponent can't bluff at all. Maybe if the opponent folds out these hands, that changes things, as the opponent may fold out these hands. Let's calculate this. See, again, shoving everything. So you know what? Maybe this hand's just good enough. Seems pretty crazy to me, but hey, I'm not going to argue. Next hand, this is another spot where it suggests shoving 30% of hands. Well, interestingly enough, it says now... Oh, so I pushed this. So I shoved wider than I should have. Most likely in this scenario, these players in the blinds were tight, which will allow me to shove wider. The way you can go in and tinker with this is you can make their calling ranges a little bit tighter. And doing that will make the shove become better. So anyway, that's how you go around and play with ICMizer. And this new Nitro feature is amazing because instead of having to go through and put in each of these hands individually, like you'd have to do in the past. You see here, we just went through the entire tournament, pinpointed these few hands that may be trouble spots. I'm not saying they are trouble spots, but they may be. And, we found a leak, like right here, under the gun. Easy shove, and I didn't do it. And also this hand, my two biggest errors, actually, in terms of equity, I guess, are situations where I made mistakes. I think these other ones are certainly speculative, but these two I think were very, very clear errors, and not making those errors in the future will go a long way to increasing my win rate. And it may not seem like 805 chips is a lot when big blind is 2,000, but if you skip these edges over and over and your opponents are taking them, they're going to take you to the cleaners. So thank you very much for watching. You can get ICMizer at jlpoker.com/ICM. It is a great program if you play tournaments. I highly recommend it. It's how I got good at poker a long time ago, playing with programs just like this. So again, check it out at jlpoker.com/ICM. Let me know how you like it, and I'll talk to you next time.